Well, hello everyone and welcome to this webinar, which has been put together jointly by Scotland's Housing Network and Under One Roof. Thanks for looking in today. For those who don't know me, my name is Jim Hayton and I'm the Private Sector Housing Officer for Scotland's Housing Network. And in that capacity, I'm responsible for organising our 5 private sector housing forums, including property factoring, property conditions and landlord registration. As we're in the middle of the coronavirus lockdown at the moment, Scotland's Housing Network's face-to-face forums have been understandably cancelled for the time being. We thought it might be helpful to prepare some material for online viewing, which people can take a look at whenever suits them. Depending on your feedback to this one, we at the network will look at preparing further webinars on relevant topics in the coming weeks. And I'm delighted to be joined in this first one today by an old friend, Annie Flint, who many of you will know as the driving force behind the Under One Roof website. This has become a source of essential information for flat dwellers throughout Scotland, and Annie will say a wee bit more about Under One Roof shortly. Recently, on behalf of Under One Roof, Annie has very helpfully put together a newsletter which provides advice to flat dwellers on current risks arising from coronavirus, which may be especially relevant to those sharing common space with other households in buildings such as tenement flats, very present in Scotland. Before I hand over to Annie, I should also declare some interest here. As well as working for Scotland's Housing Network, I'm also a board member at Under One Roof. Secondly, I'm a flat dweller myself, living as I do on the top floor of a tenement flat in Paisley. Indeed, Annie tells me it was a conversation she and I had recently about logistics of putting out my bins for the close in the current crisis that prompted her to have the idea for the newsletter and the guidance. So I'm very happy to have been of assistance in that. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Annie and ask Annie first to say a wee bit about the origins and the role of Under One Roof, after which we'll get on to the specifics of coronavirus guidance. So it's over to you, Annie.
Hello, Jim. Thanks so much for asking me to do a presentation for you, because I just can't thank the network enough for all the support that you gave us when we were trying to get the funding to get Under One Roof going. I know it was only 5 years ago. It seems like far less time than that. You know, your support has been consistent and it's been continuing, with almost every local authority in Scotland having in their email footer that link to Under One Roof. So I'm just so pleased I can kind of return a favour in doing this webinar for you today. So I know most of you know about Under One Roof, and you know that what we do is we give impartial advice on repairs and maintenance for flat owners and their advisors. That's people like you in Scotland. And you'll have seen, or you can see from our funding sources, that everyone who's involved in tenement maintenance in some way or another has given funding to get Under One Roof going. Most of those people sit on our steering group, and that's been the thing that makes us impartial. You know, it's the fact that we can reflect everyone's opinion to everybody else, that we can explain the big picture to people. And that explanation of what everyone else is doing gives us that balanced and impartial approach that we can put across to people who come to us for advice, whether they're factors or owners or environmental health officers. All of you, you know, we can give that impartiality thanks to the funding that all these people give us. So this here is the front page of Under One Roof. And I know it looks as though it's all about Victorian sandstone tenements, but it's not. It's about every kind of flat that there is. And we start off talking about owners and obligations. That's the kind of the legal background. And then if I kind of scroll through that page, you can see that we also give advice on how to keep your flat's value, best practice things you ought to do. And you can also see from those 4 pictures the types of buildings that we deal with, that it's not just old sandstone tenements that we give technical advice on. It's interwar tenements, it's multis, it's modern private developments that have been built recently. So we're there for everybody at the moment. So, Jim, there we are.
Thanks, Annie, for that very helpful summary of what Under One Roof does and how it came into being. And I can confirm too that the site is regularly used as a valuable resource by local authorities and housing association staff. Indeed, I think all councils have a link to the Under One Roof website on their council's own website, and it's frequently visited by local flat dwelling residents on a regular basis, so that they can get advice on issues that may be relevant to them. But could I now ask you to turn to the important issue of the advice that you've just produced for Scottish flat dwellers on this coronavirus, and particularly how the guidance came about, what the guidance covers, and how we hope to disseminate the advice to people who might benefit from accessing it. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, please, Annie.
Okay, well, let's start off with the guidance that we've prepared. And as you said, we were being asked these questions. Your particular question was, how do you put the bins out? Are you taking up your precious period of exercise in doing that? We also had environmental health officers telling us that the important guidance to give people is about how you maintain that 2-metre distance in common areas. When we asked other people about this, people tweeted back, give us guidance on close etiquette. And, there's this question about lifts as well that you see people mentioning, these enclosed spaces where you could be in contact with somebody who might have the awful virus. So we're just going through all of those questions in trying to prepare the advice. And I think you can see, this is one of John Gilbert's lovely drawings of a sandstone tenement, just how difficult it is to maintain that 2-metre distance, because under the 1892 Borough Police Act, which covered almost every town in Scotland, the close to tenement had to be just 4 foot wide. Well, I know that's old money, but that is definitely under 2 metres. However, they did have a good height to that, 9 feet floor to ceiling height. That's more than 2 metres. That does mean that if someone's standing on the landing up above you, they're clear of the 2-metre guidance that you need to leave space between yourself and your neighbours. So that might be a little bit of help to people in terms of trying to work out where that 2 metres is. Close etiquette. Well, I thought this is about sharing back courts, and I was particularly aware that we needed to give this kind of advice because I was reading, various bits of guidance from local authorities saying no bulk uplifts, put your rubbish out in the back garden to be collected later. And I just thought of all the families who live around here who had kids penned up in flats and needed to get them outside, and the play parks being shut, and people with dogs, people who just wanted to sunbathe or exercise outside. I thought that's a recipe for conflict. We've got to give people some kind of advice about how they might reduce that conflict, because when this is all over, we're going to need to keep working with each other to keep our tenements maintained. So I started thinking about all of that and started to prepare this article, and there's a link to it on the front page. You can see it there. That's where you go. Start clicking through that and it will take you through to this article. And you can see in the headers at the top there that we're talking about what you can do to clean your close, where does home stop and start if you're a flat dweller, what you do about emergency repairs. Now, that particular piece came in because I was in the park having one of those 2-metre distant conversations with somebody who said, oh, no toilet roll, no problem, I'll just flush using newspaper. And I just thought, oh no, here's all the close drains being blocked up with everybody flushing newspaper down. There's an emergency repair that could be avoided. But I was also aware that a lot of people were losing their jobs. What was going to happen to them? How are they going to pay their factors' bills? So that was something else that we picked up on. And also this issue about what you're going to do about trying to establish new house rules. So I'll just quickly scroll through there. You can see it's a relatively long article. It's fairly detailed, it's kind of going through some things point by point, but everyone who's read it says it's clear and it's helpful. So it is useful to just refer people to it. So let's just go through those things one bit at a time. So let's start off with the cleaning of the common areas. And the first thing is just maintain that 2-metre distance between yourself and your neighbours. That's almost more important than doing that cleaning. And when I tweeted this out, one of my neighbours came back and she said, oh, it just reminds me of the 60s, when people were out there with their rollers with a scarf over them with an embassy tip hanging out the corner of their lip, mopping away at the stairs. And I thought, well, suppose the smell of smoke drifting up the stairs is one way of warning people there's somebody out there and they should keep clear, but it might be much healthier if people could sing a song of some kind. And I'm open to various suggestions from people, just tweet me. So you've got to have some way of communicating with your neighbours that you're out there. Like I say, it could just be hollering, it could be singing a song, it just could be chapping the doors, what I'm saying about cleaning the stairs, do you need to get out before I start, whatever. But I also thought you've got to go back to the old days. I remember when I first had a tenement flat, there's this notice that would get hung on your doorknob telling you very officiously, it's your turn to clean the common stairs this week. And certainly some folk were very good at just gathering up those notices and have half a dozen of them hanging behind their front door. And other neighbours were very good at going and getting more from the council to keep passing them round to try and get you to do your shop. But generally speaking, it worked. So there were rules that people kept to pretty much. They kept going with it. And I think there are some lessons we can learn from the way things worked in the past that will work again today. So there's also the question about what to clean. We also just think about mopping the floor and sweeping the stairs. But at the moment, what we've got to think about is those high touch areas, the places where people are leaving their sticky fingerprints. It's the keypad at the front door. It's the banister rail, it's the doorknobs. All of these are things that we need to pay attention to. Maybe clean them every day is the routine. And when you come to cleaning, the thing you've got to do first of all is clean off the dirt and grease, because otherwise the disinfectant won't work. And then you apply the disinfectant. And if you're using bleach, you've got to remember that it can be dangerous, especially if it's mixed with any other cleaning product at all. So there's some downloadable guidance in the article. You can go to the article, you can click on that guidance, you can download it to a Word document that you can stick up on the close to help your neighbours clean safely. So that next important issue is the one about how you establish some house rules, how you try and communicate with your neighbours to work better, to reduce the kind of conflict that might result in this kind of thing happening. And the first thing is include everyone. It's owners, it's tenants, it's those irritating people who the rest of the time you body swerve. It's the risk takers, it's the young ones who don't seem to think they're mortal in any kind of way. It's the risk averse, the ones who will scrutinise everybody out the window saying, are they keeping 2 metres distance? You've got to get all of those people on board and bought into this idea of having some kind of house rules. And you might want to set up an impromptu notice board at the front door with bits of paper taped up or post-it notes or whatever to start off with. But if you're more organised, if everyone's got a smartphone or a computer, you can think about email groups or WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, whatever. But do whatever works in your close for everybody. And when you come to trying to sort of set the agenda about what your house rules are going to include, we do suggest a few things you might want to talk about in the article. And we can't be prescriptive about those. It's got to be what works in your own close. And so I kind of take myself back to a technique that I used when I was doing community engagement. And the technique I used was called participatory appraisal. And there were a number of rules that are worth going back to and using. And one was about setting the agenda. And someone always said you should be open, but not empty. You should have some suggestions, but you should always leave space for other people to have their own ideas and to be able to put those forward and have those views welcomed. And that picture on the right there, that was one which I was doing in a particularly sensitive area. And I'd done a first go at all this consultation. And people there had said to me, look, we've got a problem with insects and mice here. That wasn't something I could have suggested to them as being a problem. It would have said, that's me saying that you're dirty. But they said it's a problem to us. So I put it up there and you can see how many votes it got. That was their priority. And even at that second stage, I left space for people to add in other problems. And you can see how it got written in at the bottom, drying areas. And that got a number of people saying, yeah, that's a problem we need to be looking at. Even sewage problems. That was something someone mentioned. So all of those things got added in by just allowing that space for people to add their own suggestions. And then the kind of voting we used, we just let people stick dots up. And those were anonymous votes. So it meant that everyone felt that their vote and their view was being treated equally with every other person's. And it gave people a lot of confidence in the whole system being used. So you can develop something like that that works for you in your own close. So I mentioned those irritating people, you know, the ones who try and swerve all the time. Well, we've got an article on Under One Roof. It's been there since the very start about having difficult conversations. And if you're worried about speaking to awkward people, there's already been some kind of tension, I do advise you, go to that article, read through it, be prepared, maybe practice with somebody else in your household or a friend over the phone, so that when you go and speak to someone, have that awkward conversation about that difficult topic, you're prepared and you're not going to fall down some of the traps it's just very easy to get into. The next problem, this is your problem, Jim. This is the one about where home stops and starts if you're a flat dweller. Is it at your front door? Where is it? So there's the legal definition, and that is set out in the emergency regulations, and it's section 5, section 2 of section 5. And that says, for the purposes of this paragraph, the place which is home, where you're restricted in your movement, is the place where a person is living, includes the premises where they live, together with any garden, yard, passage, stair, garage, outhouse, or other appurtenance of such premises. And the appurtenance is the thing that's important when we start talking about tenements, because an appurtenance, if I can click onto it, is defined in the dictionary as something that appertains. It's an appendage or an accessory. It's a right belonging to a property. And if you look at your title deeds, you'll find it's things like it's the close, it's the garden, it's areas like that. These are all the bits which are mentioned in your title deeds. And they're the bits which you're also responsible for paying for when it comes to your common repairs. So if you need to check, go back to your title deeds and then go back and look at what you're doing alongside your own neighbours. But you've got to remember that although the close might be part of your home, you can't wash your hands on the stairs or in the lift. So there's a health definition as well, and that's a bit different from the legal definition that there is. So if people want more information, underoneroof.scot is where you go, and that coronavirus advice, God, what a tongue tripper that is there accessible on the front page. So Jim, that's where we are with it.
Well, thank you so much for that, Annie. And I have to say, I've noticed too the difficulties of saying coronavirus advice. Maybe we should start using the term COVID-19, I'm not sure. But thank you so much for that comprehensive account of the origins and content of the virus advice for flat dwellers. Not only will it be really helpful, but I don't think we'd be overstating the case to say that in the context of a busy tenement close with lots of households coming and going, that some of the advice in cleaning and disinfecting could be potentially life-saving in the current climate. So thank you so much for that, and we'll be uploading the webinar to our website, and we'll provide links to Under One Roof website too, and any other sites where we think that users might find the guidance helpful. If I could mention something else, Annie, on another note, we've heard a lot in the news recently about financial pressures people are coming under and measures being put in place by the government and others to help hard-pressed citizens deal with financial pressures, including, for example, talk of mortgage holidays and non-eviction of tenants for rent arrears during the crisis, which everyone would agree with. But many households in flatted buildings will have property factors, and with property factors come property factors bills to pay. Indeed, I received my own regular quarterly bill only last week, and I wondered if you had any advice for people living in flatted property who might be facing difficulties at the moment with paying factors bills, and anything that they could do to alleviate that.
Yes, Jim, I think the first thing people could do is actually just go and speak to their factor about the problems that they've got. Don't just cancel the direct debit that you've got. Speak to people about it. And I think the most important reason for doing that is that your factors bill is not just paying the factor for their services. It could include your common insurance premiums. And if you let those premiums stop, then you could lose your common insurance. Now, that's not just a legal requirement to have common insurance in Scotland. It's also really important because if you do have a fire in your tenement and just one owner can't afford to repay the cost of rebuilding their flat, then everyone is losing out. So speak to your factor about what you can do to deal with this. And don't neglect those little bits of maintenance that need to be done, because insurance companies are very good at body swerving, paying for insurance where they think it may be due to a lack of maintenance in the past. And there have been incidents of people where a tenement's collapsed who have been unable to claim on their insurance. So speak to your factor. If your factor can't help you, take financial advice. There is guidance on the website about what you can do.
Thanks again for that, Annie. And I'm sure, again, that will be very helpful to people listening to this who might well be having difficulties in paying bills. And I think your point about communication early and effective communication is a point very well made and worth emphasising. Before we let you go, Annie, I wondered if you could tell us just a wee bit about the next steps for Under One Roof, what your hopes and aspirations are for the website and the service, and maybe where you see Under One Roof going from here.
Yes, so as I mentioned, our phase 1 started about 5 years ago with support from the network, and local authorities are stepping up to the mark again to keep us going into phase 2. So phase 2, we're going to become an independent charity in our own right. We've been working in partnership with other organisations, first of all, Royal Incorporation of Architects in Scotland, who've remained very supportive. Subsequently, with Changeworks in Edinburgh, who've been the managing agents for us and helped us to remain accountable to everybody. But we'll be becoming an independent charity. And one of the reasons for doing that is that it will enable us to keep advocating on owners' behalf. At first, I thought it was going to be advocating on owners' behalf about the new legislation, which we hope is going to be going through the Scottish Parliament in the next few years. And that was something which I was doing on a voluntary basis under the aegis of the Tenement Action Group, where I was chairing the subgroups that were looking at issues such as the establishment of owners' associations and sinking funds. But, I'm now almost starting to think there's maybe another campaign which Under One Roof might take up in its phase 2, and that's going to be trying to make sure that universal credit actually doesn't just not only takes account of the mortgage interest that people has to pay, but also that element of common insurance. But we already have quite a lot of the funding in the bank, and people like Scottish Government, Glasgow City Council have already paid up for their share of this upcoming year's funding for Under One Roof. We've had almost every local authority in Scotland, except the very smallest, say that they will chip in over the next 5 years. So I'm pretty confident that we will be there, and that I'll be up and training a successor who will be able to keep on doing all the good work that we've been doing and keep us going to help owners and their advisors working to maintain tenements over the next 5 years.
Well, thank you very much for that, Annie, and giving us the next steps for Under One Roof. And thank you too for your kind words about the network at the start of your presentation. Let me reciprocate by saying that on behalf of Scotland's Housing Network, we plan to continue to play a part as Under One Roof goes forward and seeks charitable status along with my fellow board members. I think Under One Roof has never been more vital with everything that's going on at the moment in respect of the activity we've seen in the Scottish Parliament last year and commissions being set up specifically to look at tenement property and the obvious issues of funding and how we're going to maintain and improve our tenements, particularly our older tenements, but flatted dwellings in general up to a decent standard in future. And we look forward, as I say, to playing our part in that and trying to make sure that the voices get heard when that debate is proceeding. So thanks again, Annie, and it's just remains for me to end this by saying thank you very much for your contribution and your efforts in putting this together, and thanking you on behalf of the network, and wishing Under One Roof every success in the future. So thanks again. We'll upload this to our website. We'll see what reaction we get and what feedback, and if we think there's a demand for it, we can put on another webinar and perhaps have a participatory session where we can encourage people to register and come along and take part in a debate and discussion. But this is the first one we've done, so we're delighted that we've got to this stage and we're able to put this out there. So thanks, Annie, and with that, I'm going to close the webinar just now. Thank you very much.